Twitter at John J. Hendrix. John, I got to ask you a question. How many cups of coffee have you drinking today?
Only had about 3, but I've also had a rain, had a couple of cokes and all that. So, I mean, got to stay caffeinated, and another one's coming because I don't know. We'll see. This thing is turning into a weight fest, and it's just I don't know. I think it's up in the air right now. You tell me you can make a case almost for anybody, even though some of them don't make sense.
Okay, so let's go there. Let's get the $35 million elephant out of the room. Look, I think that the Saints, like you just mentioned, have the most to offer Deshaun Watson, but look, he's from Georgia, from the greater Atlanta area. Maybe he wants to go home. Panthers, Browns get in the mix. John, what are you hearing of latest? And look, like you said, this is going on a long time, but what is going on here with Deshaun Watson?
Right now, it's just one of those things where he's just torn. I think, obviously he's heard from all 4 teams, heard their pitches, heard their presentations. Everyone went well. Obviously, you put your best foot forward, roll out the red carpet. It's interesting that this meeting with Watson with the Falcons was in Atlanta this time. All the other ones, they came to him at Houston. So I think that obviously says something. But, ultimately, this is one of those where I don't think we're going to get a immediate decision here. I'd love to tell you it would be tonight because I'd love to put this thing to bed one way or another, because if this doesn't work out, it's Team Jameis, right? And so, so right now it's one of those, I think he's going to sleep on it, try to figure out what he wants to do best for his next move, and then just kind of go from there. But, from my understanding, everything with all 4 of these teams went well, which I'm not surprised there. But, you got to weigh out your options and then make a decision and, hope it's the right one.
Well, John, it's interesting because we just had a super chat in here and everybody was wanting me to ask you how big of a deal, like you've covered the NFL, you've covered the Saints for a long time, and him going to Atlanta, I know that it can be a big deal and may be a big deal, but do you think that it's because he's from there that maybe it's a little bit different, or maybe he goes and sees grandma, mom, whatever it may be? Do you think that could be a possibility? And to add on to that, Matt Ryan's contract might be pretty hard to move. I mean, John, let's just play brass tacks here. I mean, they might have to get a third team involved, though, if he goes to Atlanta, right?
Yeah, look, that's the question. And again, Atlanta to New Orleans, that's a quick little flight. That's not that hard to go to Atlanta from New
It's
Orleans.
53 minutes.
Yeah, it's not much. And he's got the private jet, so he'd probably get there faster, right? And so
right.
I don't think that's a huge factor. Obviously, being able to play there, I think that obviously might mean a little bit. But, I mean, we've seen teams and players that have had a chance, like LSU products, have a chance to play in front of their home team and it doesn't pan out. So it's not necessarily a thing. I think the bigger concern is Matt Ryan's contract, because we got word today that the restructure hasn't happened, right? And so, and it even comes down the pipeline that says, hey, they said a week ago that it was, and then his sister's on Twitter apparently saying, no, it didn't. So that's kind of leading to some bad blood there. But, I just don't understand. Navigating Matt Ryan's contract is going to be huge. I mean, he is a mega cap hit. And, if they didn't restructure him, that's a lot of money on the table. And so they already lost Russell Gage. They lost a lot of good defensive players. They are entertaining Jarvis Landry, but man, they don't have any weapons. They just don't. It's not a desirable spot. And the fact is, yeah, you could play in front of your home guys. Again, Carolina's not really a desirable spot. Cleveland, I mean, the way they treat and Baker Mayfield, that I don't think I would want to get tied into that. Again, you look at all those different types of factors. I think New Orleans makes the most sense here, right? And again, if I was picking, I think that's the most desired upside because he has a defense that can play, right? You have question marks everywhere else. I mean, Cleveland's is pretty good, but offensive side of the ball, unless you're okay with Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb running the ball all the time, I mean, you don't really have to do much, I guess. So obviously he has the no trade clause. He gets to say so over what is going on. I've heard a lot of Saints players have been on the recruitment train, and I think he's going to get bombarded from everybody, right? So I don't think that's anything new. But again, I would think that we might get a decision if it's not late tonight, hopefully tomorrow, and just weighing out the options. Again, Matt Ryan's contract is astronomical. Somebody's going to have to take that on. Somebody's going to have to do a thing. And, Terry Fontenot is going in his second year, and obviously I think there's maybe some pressure on to make a big splash and to get somebody like him. But, they should have got out in front of this a long time ago, because they're going to have to deal with some ramifications if this does happen with them.
I think what you just said was probably the biggest thing in all of this, John. And the biggest question I had, it's not, does he want to go to Atlanta? It's, is it actually feasible for him to go to Atlanta? So I want to ask this off of that. Is there a situation where, I mean, because everybody's talking about Deshaun, right? What does Deshaun want? Does Deshaun want to go here? Does Deshaun want to go there? Well, hell, what about Houston? Now, I know that they probably have to pre-okay a deal before he goes and talks to these teams. But, man, there could be some late-night draws. You talk about Terry Fontenot. Does Mickey Loomis pick up the phone and say, hey, because, look, the Saints have had a lot of success with the Texans, salary cap, how they finagled that kind of stuff. Do you think that that Fontenot's inexperience and Mickey Loomis's experience at the end of the day could, you know, what if the Texans come to Deshaun and say, hey, look, man, the Saints just gave us an offer we can't refuse. Like, we just literally can't refuse. Do you think that the Texans hold all the weight here or just as much as Deshaun does in this specific scenario?
No, I don't think the Texans have that much. I mean, I think this is a situation where Deshaun's going to pick it, and it's based off of that. Because if they were getting the highest asking price, I mean, Indianapolis called, right? I mean, San Francisco could try to make a move, but they, you know, that's not a realistic option. I mean, these are the 4 teams on the table, and essentially whatever they pick, I mean, they've all turned in offers to the Texans. It's just one of those that, you know, this is where you want to go. This is the deal that will work out. Obviously, so trades factors are already there. And I mean, it's kind of this, I guess I would say, as simple as that. And, you know, this whole saga, he's got a chance to be a featured quarterback no matter wherever he goes. And so I think with him going in a situation where Atlanta and Cleveland, with the quarterback situations the way they are there, I think that's a little bit of a tension thing, you know, between front office and those quarterbacks. So again, I don't know if that would be the smartest move. And then Fontenot, I think he's got a lot of experience. I love the hell out of him when he was at New Orleans. He's a smart guy, knows his stuff. You know, I don't know if you say this is a case of master versus teacher or anything like that. But, you know, I would say that Atlanta's going to have a lot of things they're going to have to figure out, and they're going to have to spend like crazy. They're going to have to get him more weapons. They don't have a run game to support Watson. They don't have an offensive line. They just don't have pretty much of anything to offer, and they just lost their best linebacker. And then even with the trade options, you know, they're talking about throwing Kyle Pitts and AJ Terrell in there. I mean, that would make no sense. You know, I just don't get it. So I don't know. I think New Orleans is a clear-cut guy, but again, it's if they don't, I think Jameis is your quick answer right there.
Well, it's always great to have a backup plan, and let's see what, you know, we'll get into that in just a second. But Saints lead writer, reporter for @Saints News, @SI Now. You can follow him on Twitter @John J. Hendrix. Fantastic podcast. I go and listen to it. Believe Podcast Network. We'll let him know where. Well, he will let you know where to get that at the end of the segment. John, let's get very quickly. I want to get one more Deshaun question in, and a lot of people are asking not just Deshaun but other free agency news. Outside of Drew Brees, is this the biggest free agent news or following that the Saints have ever had in the last 20 years, in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, just because it's a trade. I mean, Drew was a free agent, you know, and this is a trade, obviously, that you're looking at. And
right.
I mean, I think just overall, just the way the landscape is shifting, just the simple fact that there is no Sean Payton, there is no Drew Brees anymore. This is Dennis Allen finally getting able to put his stamp in things. You know, Marcus Williams was a guy I thought they were going to keep. They're trying to make a keep, but then his price and his tag was just too much, and he got a good deal in Baltimore. But you know, you get, you know, Marcus May, he's very capable. Some LSU fans might remember his days in Florida. I mean, I think they made out well there. But you know, look, I think given how Allen talked about this being the most important decision that this team's going to have to make during his press conference when he was introduced, again, I think this is the thing. He's trying to make this big move. And look, I don't think parting ways with the 3 first rounders is a big deal. I mean, look how they've drafted. You got Cesar Ruiz, Peyton Turner. You know, those guys aren't really setting the world on fire. I mean, that's just, I don't think based on how they've drafted recently that you could say, oh, you got to keep that first rounder. But then again, you got to remember, this is not Sean Payton doing it, right? This is right. Dennis Allen with Jeff Ireland and Mickey Loomis. So maybe there's a better way to draft now. But, you know, it's all unfamiliar territory in a way. But, again, I think, back to your question, this is the most intriguing and most nerve-wracking type of feel that we've had, I think, since I've ever covered this team, probably the last 20 years.
I had to say for me, and obviously we cover more of LSU than Saints. Obviously, the head coach last year. I mean, it was like refresh, refresh, refresh. My wife's like, "What are you doing up at 5 o'clock in the morning?" I'm like, "Dude, I mean, it's just so nerve wracking." So I mean, it's just I know the grind you're on, man, and I don't envy you in this, really in the slightest. But John's joining us. John, we have a question here from Shane on YouTube. He says, would Winston get turned off by the Saints' pursuit of Watson? Are we certain that he's a sure plan B? Which I think is a good question. You talked about on to Jameis. Is there a way that maybe Jameis goes to Seattle if this doesn't pan out?
I think there's a market for him. I definitely think there's a market for him, but I think it's also interesting. There's nothing been as far as reported visits or anything from these quarterback needy teams. And, you look at it too. I mean, I think there's some legitimate concerns with him coming off a torn ACL. I know he's put out those workout videos. He looks good. I think he's going to be ready to start in week 1. And so, again, this is a fluid situation just because now if you're a team looking for a quarterback, which, look, let's face it, it's not as many as it was. I mean, you got Pittsburgh that fixed their situation. Washington fixed their situation. I mean, there's just a lot of things. So Jimmy G's a guy that's still working out there. Baker Mayfield's going to be on the move because I know he's not coming back to Cleveland. Cleveland needs a quarterback, obviously. And then if Matt Ryan is a guy that's going to be on the move, that's another one too. So between those three, Jimmy G, Mayfield, and obviously Ryan, Winston might not find an ideal situation at first. I think Seattle would make a lot of sense for sure. And I know Jameis can play. Look, I know some people have that knack and that, thing about where, he's a turnover machine and stuff. But man, I tell you, since day one, when Jameis walked in the building, he was nothing but professional. Looking at a training camp, he just humbled himself. He learned behind Drew. He was doing extremely well. I mean, it was off and on, but I think a lot of that was the continuity at quarterback because you have him go one day with the ones and then he goes the twos and there's vice versa. And so once he got a chance to start, 14 touchdowns, 3 picks, he was doing some good things with his legs. The only real boneheaded play he had was against the Patriots where he kind of just threw up a prayer and he said, "That's all God," you know what I'm saying? And it ended up being a touchdown. But, of his picks, the one bad one I think was the ones against Carolina, but even still, that wasn't totally his fault. So I think Jameis is going to have a market, but I also feel like a lot of these free agents that you see are going to be more of a wave 2, wave 3 type guy. So, the only one that's been signed is Marcus Williams. Teron Armstead's kind of waiting to see what happens with this Deshaun Watson situation. Obviously, they incurred $13 million in dead money, but a lot of these other guys, like PJ Williams is a prime example. He's going to have to wait. Traquan Smith's going to have to wait. I think Quan Alexander is going to have to wait a little bit too. And this is a really interesting way how free agency just kind of goes. And everybody's got to remember this is only the start. Some people, I've heard some players probably aren't going to get looks until after the draft too. So that's when teams will start filling out their roster. So a lot of these guys might have to wait. And so the Saints, one player right now, the big domino, if they could land Deshaun Watson, I guarantee you there's going to be a lot more rumored interest. Some teams or players might be willing to come and take less than what they can get on the open market just to come play in New Orleans. But we'll see because right now it feels like this thing is being drug out a lot and it doesn't really need to be.
Teron Armstead not signing today before 3 or getting the deal getting done before 3. Are you, I don't want to say nervous, but are you, if Deshaun comes, could they work out a deal there with him possibly to come back? Because it seems like he's being really patient in all of this. If Deshaun comes, that, he would want to come back. But what do you think about him and possibly his return?
Yeah, look, I think it's possible. He said the other day that the window's still open. He'd love to come back to New Orleans and stuff, but he understands that NFL is a business. I think the problem there is people know how talented Teron Armstead is. And there's always that asterisk, that footnote saying when healthy. And the fact is, when you invest so much money in a left tackle like that, you know that he's not going to go through a full season. And I think the only time he's been able to almost go a full season, he got knocked out 2 games for COVID. That's the healthiest he's been. Right. But you run that risk for a guy that's on the other side of 30. I don't think you invest that much money, and I think he's going to look for a good situation for him. I know he wants to start. Saints do make a lot of sense. Even if Winston was to come back, I still think that he would make a lot of sense. But at some point, I think, depending on how they attack this and if it doesn't happen, then maybe they look at a James Hurst. I know sometimes, I think we talked about it before on your last
Yep.
time I was here about Ryan Ramczyk moving over. I just don't
Right.
see that happening. I don't think you touch him. I think you would go to the draft, and if you don't land Deshaun Watson, use 18 overall, get you a stellar left tackle to protect your blind side and be a staple like Ramczyk has been. So Winston will have to wait a little bit, and just like some of these other guys. But if they don't land Watson, I know the look of it saying, hey, I don't think this guy would wait around, but there is no interested teams, or there's no visits. Let me put it that way. I'm sure they're interested teams, and no visits lined up at this moment right now. He's still rehabbing. I know he's going to be ready to go, but it's one of those really wait and see. But I feel like they're best suited and they have the best backup plan. Whereas the other teams, I don't know what they're going to do.
That's so wild, though. Like, it's so wild that other teams, it's so chaotic around it, and you just don't know. But then the Saints seem to be the and I know, John, we might be a little bit biased, but we're kind of not when you put it on paper, which is so interesting. Two more, and then we'll get you out of here. A lot of LSU fans are firing the questions right now about Tyrann Mathieu and the Honey Badger, and obviously Jarvis Landry. It kind of seems like that's not going to be a case. Maybe we were perceiving something more than what we initially thought that maybe it is right now. Anything you're hearing on Mathieu or Jarvis?
I think Matthew's window's closed just because they picked up Marcus May, and he's the guy that's going to replace Marcus Williams. And if anything, because I know he could still get top dollar, the Saints would look at PJ Williams to get as a backup plan, because May's got a couple of interesting things he's going to have to deal with, that DUI from last year. And so could face suspension. We have to see how that plays out. But as far as Landry, I know CJ McCollum was heavy on the recruiting. I don't know if the interest was as high as it was built up to be, from everything I understand on that. But, look, Saints need wide receivers. And I mean, it's interesting that Landry would visit the Falcons, but that's just things that you got to keep an eye out on. Just because you visit doesn't mean that's where it ends up. So some teams can swoop in. The wide receiver market's going to have another veteran, Julio Jones. I'm not saying Julio to the Saints or anything like that, but these guys are going to have to wait a little bit. And you got to remember, this is a stellar wide receiver class that's coming into. I mean, you got some real home runs and some real good talent that can come in here in the draft. And so if you don't get this higher priced veterans or some of these guys, I mean, I'm still astounded that the contract that, some of these guys got, like Christian Kirk. I just don't get it. I was kind of hoping for DJ Chark. So I know some LSU fans, but I was hoping for a DJ Chark in New Orleans, just a guy looking to prove himself. But I think it's one of those situations where the quarterback situation isn't fixed, or it isn't there. And, none of the options on the roster are going to be there in week one as far as starting options. So it's hard for a wide receiver to be pitched on a potential or inevitable or anything like that when it's not in place.
Last one, John, for you. When you tell me, and you could tell me I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just overthinking this way too much. But when you're about to give that much draft capital up, potentially, that the Saints are about to give up, is there a way, or is there a quarterback? And I don't think that there is, but maybe a quarterback in this draft that the Saints could, if Watson doesn't come here, you keep your picks and nothing happens, that you try to structure a deal to move up in the draft and get a quarterback, maybe like a Kenny Pickett or whoever it may be. Do you think the Saints entertain that, or do they just try to go back to Watson and then maybe look for next year's draft or free agency pool?
I think it's possible. I mean, I don't think any of these quarterbacks that are coming in are going to be week one starters. I just don't see it. I think Malik Willis is intriguing. I think Kenny Pickett is pretty good too. I think, Corral is good. And I think Sam Howell, but you asked me, does it have the buzz and feel like when Justin Herbert and those quarterbacks came out of the draft? No, I don't think so. And so I could see them potentially taking somebody. I don't think that they've given up on Ian Book. I think Book needs a lot of work and refinement too. But at the same time, they're going to be in a situation where if they don't land Watson, they're going to have a left tackle. They're going to have to get receivers. And, that's one of the reasons why I've caped so hard for Jameis, is because, You can get him at a good deal. You can get upgraded talent and pass catching receivers, and not just receivers, but tight ends to go around him too to make it even better. Not just Mike Thomas, because if you're banking on Thomas being the savior of the team for receptions and the receiving department, then you're mistaken, because they got to have a better receiving option cores. I like a scenario where Callaway and Hardy are going to be challenging for the 3 and 4 spot, not just given the 2 and 3 because they're it, and then undrafted guys are going to have to figure it out. But would I say it's in far-fetched to have a quarterback to come behind and develop? No, I don't think so. But it would be just hard for me to sit here and think with their other needs that they would go to a quarterback. And of the ones that are available, I just don't see any of them that are going to be starting in week 1.
I lied very quickly. Last one. Hashtag Ask John about Mickey Loomis and the Saints being 31 out of 32 in the NFL teams. John, I said last night that the NFL salary cap is a lot like my abs. Technically, they exist, but you're never going to really see it, nor is it actually like visible. Just tell the fans, please, because I saw you tweeting today, the salary cap. It's kind of like it might be a cap, but there's a lot of leeway there to get under it.
Yeah, I mean, the salary cap, everybody talks about them being hell. It's kicking the can down the road or anything. But last year, I mean, they've always operated under the belief that the cap is going to rise, which it does, other than COVID year, right? And so next year it's going to rise too. And it could be even fatter because of the broadcast and TV deals and all that. And so this is a team that doesn't mind playing close to the vest because the state support and all these different things that allow them to do these types of things. And so, again, you look at teams that just don't spend, right? I mean, You got 60 to 80 million dollars in space. There's a problem. That's why you go 2 and 15 or 1 and 16, and you're just not able to field a competitor. And again, I know it drives a lot of people crazy, that the fact that they basically backload these contracts and the bill comes due, but they always find a way, and they're always being able to do these restructures. So I don't think it's a problem. And honestly, the Mickey Loomis deserves a ton of praise, but it's Kai Harley who does all the numbers, right? He's the guy that people are thinking who's this guy? You see him and he crunches the numbers. He gets this thing working. And again, to be able to restructure and do some of these deals, everybody's got to remember that it's not that a player is going to be any less money. He just takes the cap hit and he gets more cash, right? I mean, I take that deal every day. If you tell me, okay, well, I'll defer. I put my salary down $1 million, but I'm going to take 10 in cash. I'd sign me up every day, but it's because of how the Saints do and the state and all these types of money that allow them to keep operating this way. And so some of these other markets just don't have that support. They just aren't able to do it. And some of the owners are just cheap. So I will say this other too, is that, Gail Benson, we've talked with her a good bit over the years, and her biggest thing is she is doing her best to honor Tom's legacy. And Tom wanted to be a field competitor, and he operates on the same type of spirit and operation that Tom would want to do. And so, again, she's actively involved, but, a lot of this is coming out of her pocket, obviously, but, she's trying to keep with what Tom's able to do. And so I think she's building contenders. And again, a situation where, Mickey has done this a long time, and he's got Jeff as a supporter factor, and Dennis Allen's trying to make his stamp. And I think they're making moves and going to field a team that's going to resemble that.
It's John J. Hendrix, like the singer. Add the X. I knew I was going to butcher that. I butchered that, but I tried. I know you say that every time, but I butchered it. Buddy, you've been fantastic as always. Tell everybody what you're doing, I know they know where to follow you and everything like that on Twitter, but other things that you have coming up as well.
Yeah, just follow me on Twitter, John J. Hendrix. It's Hendrix, just like Jimmy. I always tell people, I think that's the easiest way.
There it is.
And then I joke because it depends on your age. Some people just don't get the reference. I mean, I'm about to be 38 in June, so it's just one of those things where it's like, you never heard of Jimi Hendrix? I feel sorry for you, right? Go do some soul searching if you haven't. But at any rate, just follow us there, si.com/NFL/Saints or saints.media. That'd be the easiest thing. And then check us out at Believe Podcast Network. I do one with Terrence Copper. Just had a cool, fun partnership developed with FOCO. That's Forever Collectibles. Check me out over there. I got a link on my pin to my tweet. 15% off right now. So if you were looking for some merch, not just Saints merch, but LSU merch or favorite team merch, use that code, get 15% off. So while we're plugging stuff away.
Hey, hey, I'm going there after the show. You got my word. You have my word. I'm going to do it. Thanks, John.